5G happen. And so this panel is really, as you've seen from the title, it's about using SDN and NFV to optimize service delivery and network performance. And what I want to kick it off with, well, first of all, we have a very distinguished group of panelists here. I'm just going to quickly introduce each one. This is Jeff White from Ericsson, Pari Bajpay from AT&T, Javan, who we already heard earlier this afternoon from NGMN, and Wen from Huawei. So we've got like 2 vendors, 2 operators on the panel, and their bios and other details are already available on the Informa website. So what I want to talk about, I'll just take a couple of minutes to kick off with, there are 3 things we at play here. We have SDN and NFV and 5G, and SDN and NFV is a work in progress itself, and as is 5G. But let's look at, based on what was discussed throughout the day today, a few of the key distinguishing characteristics of what defines SDN and NFV, and why would they in fact be applicable to 5G, which our panelists are going to talk to us about. So if you think about SDN, and we heard this morning from Dr. Shea and other people, you're talking about the separation of control and data plane. That fundamentally defines software-defined networking. Most people think about that. The other thing is the centralization of the control, either logically or physically. And finally, the facility to have programmatic control of traffic. I would think that these are 3 characteristics of SDN that are valuable in the context of 5G. And if you look at NFV, then again, it's the commoditization of hardware. It's the ability to flexibly chain different functions to create a lot of new services in the network, and the ability to leverage the cloud. And we'll talk more on the panel as to how we can actually do that. And if you think of 5G, well, a lot of different things were said. We saw it even in Medet's talk and other talks throughout the day, the characteristics that have been defined. But if we just pull all of that out and forget the numbers, in terms of qualitatively, what are we trying to do in 5G? At least what I got out of it was that we have a wide dynamic bandwidth range, going from kilobits per second for machine-based IoT to gigabits per second potentially for video downloads and user interactions. The other is that it's going to be in tandem with 4G. It's not something that's just going to replace it. So we have to think about things in context with LTE, LTE-A being the fundamental infrastructure that may drive 5G. And finally, we have to think about 3 things that Dr. Che said, and I think others have echoed that, is mobility, security, and quality of service, which is really going to be the defining characteristics of what you do with 5G. And I would add to that also agility, which is the ability to dynamically adapt your network, and reliability, which is offering a service depending on the vertical you're working with in an extremely cost-efficient but resilient manner. So with that introduction, I want to dive right into the Q&A, and we'd like to make this an interactive session. It's the end of the day. I know you're tired. You've been here since 8 a.m. But hopefully with the distinguished panel and the kind of things we're going to talk about, I hope that you will contribute your questions. So we're really counting on that. So let me kick it off to the panel with the first question, which is, what role do SDN and NFV have in this emerging 5G wireless network space? And this kind of gives the opportunity for us to hear what the panel has been thinking about in this context. We can start.
Okay. So what roles for NFV and SDN in the 5G? So
yes.
The NFV and SDN is the baseline for 5G. So it's a default. It's a native assumption for 5G to build up. Then what 5G will take NFV and SDN beyond, that is the question for the 5G technology research or development. So in that case, it is when we have this NFV and SDN platform, we know today, as you mentioned, many characteristics and based on the data center style and the cloud computing. In that case, there are much room for 5G to play in terms of a customized service and also automation. The automation of the whole network and the service, that's the key for 5G. In terms of automation, I mean a lot of intelligent algorithms and the complexity can handle by the technology on top of NFV and SDN.
Great.
All right, thanks. I also represent Bell Mobility, Bell Canada, as you know. I think much has been said by yourself and Huawei, and I will be very brief. Of course, we have in 5G, as it was said, it's about use cases, it's about experience, it's about different business models, and you have to have flexibility in all directions. As you said, agility in the sense of response to change, programmability, ability to separate controls so that you can steer the data traffic as you need and manage granularly things. At the same, as I said earlier, liberating functions, because at the end of the day, anything as a service, we're dealing with functions of all kinds. And that function is not just a particular service as we know it today. It could be a waveform, it could be a spectrum. So I stop at that point.
So I'd like to reinforce what Dr. Tong said and Javan said. I agree that SDN and NFV are going to be integral parts of 5G. In fact, this whole virtualization of the network is not waiting for 5G, it's already begun, right, as most of you probably know. And the basic principles of NFV and SDN will apply to 5G in a bigger way, I believe. So you think about the potential of CapEx benefits that you can get as you can virtualize more, leveraging commercial off-the-shelf hardware. And by the way, as you get closer to the RAN space, that's something that still needs to be proven in terms of performance and latency. But again, the more you can put on COTS, the more optimal your network in terms of cost performance is going to be. The other key aspect of it is increasing the utilization of our network resources, right? So leveraging commodity hardware in the cloud allows you to improve utilization, increase utilization, so you have less stranded capacity out there. Now, the other key area is going to be OpEx benefits, and that's something that you really need to focus on a lot, because you think of operations procedures, they could be automated, and they can be automated in a much bigger way than you can imagine. You think about, for example, maintenance. Today you see a lot of proactive maintenance being done. We surveil the network, we collect billions of events, we correlate them, we turn them into actionable events. A lot of that goes on. We can even predict a lot of failures. But the key aspect of what NFV and SDN gives you is the ability to make it more adaptive, make your network adaptive. So collect the information, correlate it, look for signatures, and then go and take adaptive action. I think that's going to be unique with what you can get with NFV. And as you think about the 5G space, and you can see how those principles can apply to 5G in such a big way.
Thanks, Pari. So along with my other panelists, I would say that there are really three areas, and I'm going to be a little specific. So even though we've already separated, at least at Ericsson, the control and forwarding plane pretty rigorously, we still sell these elements called gateways. And what is a gateway? Why did we create these gateways? Well, a gateway, what it does is provide user functionality inside a network. So it allows you to manage very specific users within a very large network. And networks before gateways were managed at a network level. So that's become a bit of a challenge, and it's created an opportunity. So I think in 5G, some of the work we're doing with our customers is we're going to take that separation, control, and forwarding to another level, and effectively take a lot of those gateway functions and embed them within the network. So they're no longer monolithic capabilities that create challenges in network management and operation. So I think that that's one very specific use, and SDN will play a pivotal role in doing that as well as NFV. So that's one use case. I think another use case is that today, if you look at 3GPP networks, they're very much managed in a tunneled environment. And again, we did tunneling because that was really the only way we could do mobility management. So these tunnel networks, they're great, they work fine. However, with SDN in particular, we will now have the ability to manage things at the IP flow level. So we can leverage that to manage the things that need to be managed in a tunnel-like environment very flexibly, like mobility management. However, capabilities that don't need to be managed in a tunnel environment, like content delivery and a lot of advanced services, we will be able to manage those outside a mobility environment, much more traditional way. Well, shouldn't call SDN traditional, it's sort of new, but be able to manage that with more traditional techniques at a flow level. And then the last, and I think a very, very important functionality that SDN and NFV will provide is placement. So a lot of these networks, if you start looking at coordination and ultra-dense networks using high frequency millimeter wave, are going to have some very, very specific latency requirements, interference requirements, and we're going to need to take functionality that today is embedded in these gateways further back in the network and distribute it very cost effectively, to Pari's point. So I think that those are the three real use cases of SDN and NFV.
Wonderful. So actually at this point we should open it up to the audience, because it kind of sets the level for where the panelists are coming from, and we've talked a little bit about SDN and NFV. So instead of just me asking the panel questions, let's throw it up to the audience and let's get started and warm up with the audience asking questions. So just get the mic to you so that, excuse me, actually may I just go to this mic? Let's get the mic to you.
Thank you. So my name's Naved Khan. I'm representing Hitachi Data Systems, and it was interesting what you were saying earlier on about the tunnel management and specifically looking at how mobility management was done. Oops. I don't know why I'm using it. Maybe I should go all the way back over there, right? So, and you talked about SDN and NFV and so on and so forth. And at that moment in time, I thought, well, that's where I felt, when you're going to be managing at a per flow basis, that's where analytics can actually help you to be able to enable that. So what's your position and thoughts around that? How it's going to be pervade overall sort of percolation of these new use cases as well as the overall ecosystem?
I think it's a great question. So we address sort of how to do data plane management and distribute functionality for really managing traffic. But the one thing, I think SDN and NFV also brings along a very rich control infrastructure with orchestration and additional management capabilities that were designed to manage these networks. So I think we call it autonomic networks, so we do believe analytics will have a very strong play in managing not only interference mitigation and sort of the lower level capabilities, but where do you place this functionality and dynamically placing it, because that's the key dynamic in my mind. You can't afford to distribute functionality in the hope that you're going to require it. So I think you'll see a greater degree of dynamicism. I don't know if that's an English word or not. But in these networks, and it'll be done through orchestration and through SDN control. Pari, you've done a lot of work.
Yeah, I just want to add to that is what Jeff said is so true, and where that analysis is done is also important, right? It's got to be close to the edge. It's really talking big stream analytics. There's a lot of data. It's drinking from a fire hose. I mean, you've seen all kinds of analogies there. And that's really key, is how can you assimilate, so much data. And as Faraz was talking about earlier, big data is going to be a huge component of this. So being able to take that data, digest it, and make it actionable at the edge is going to be key.
I may be echoing, but I'd like to emphasize on the significance of this, because as you know, big data has its challenges as well, with the volume, with relevance, with how to change that efficiently to small data to be put in use. But when you look at it in all directions, and very well said by other fellow panelists and also by the presenters like Docomo and others, that how significant and essential and inevitable this task becomes, because even when you do orchestration, for example, in an automated way, trying to monitor, scale, adjust and respond, all the way from network planning and so on, which a lot of it may be dynamic and not necessarily ahead of time. So there's much to be said about that. I can't imagine it could be anything but inevitable.
Yes, just to more stretch what NFV or SDN can do for 5G. For example, we have this very powerful control plan to perform the SDN function. In that case, if you have a mobility case, you have potentially have a personal EPC or personal gateway. And as your mobility handling today, it may be in that time that the gateway is moving in the virtual machine as you move in the network. So these type of things are more dramatic in terms of network landscape as we consider today. So every slicing, every let's say 50 people, 100 people in this room have the slice of a network. The topology of a design, deploy of the network can be automated and with a very different, optimized or customized topology for that. The other thing is can go as to the end-to-end, even customize the protocol. So why we have to turn on TCP IP for every application, which in some cases, for example, in the sensor data, they don't need that. So these are the things that represents a very large opportunity and different look for the 5G compared to the network we have today.
So going back to the analytics question, I mean, it seemed to me that by using better analytics, you can act, as Pari said, I mean, can we make it more actionable, and does that have a potential to increase profitability? I guess that's one of the things that Medhat was talking about. How do you make things more profitable? How do you make them with low ARPUs? So it seems to me that there's a potential there with analytics, especially if you do real-time analytics, to maybe take decisions that can be more efficient and somehow increase, the ability of the operator to work more efficiently. I don't know if the panel has a thought on that.
Well, a lot of folks have talked about network slicing today. I'm not a big fan of network slicing. Okay? I'm not a fan of dedicating any resource if I can possibly dynamically allocate it. So if you can build a network that has the ability on a per user, per flow, per session basis to allocate the appropriate level of latency, QoS, buffer, et cetera, then that's going to be much more efficient than slicing a network and dedicating it for different classes of users or different classes of enterprises, et cetera. I also think that takes us a step further into where, what we really consider customers and our billable capabilities. So
sure.
You can bill on a per app basis, or you can bill on a per download basis. I think that creates abilities for operators to monetize the whole application ecosystem much better.
Sure. Yes, please.
First of all, just wanted to clarify that some of us, when we talk about slicing, we don't mean dedication in that sense.
Only in a virtual sense, perhaps.
Yes, we may be meaning the same thing, but using different words. This is absolutely dynamic, adaptive, using Pari's word, and also, as I said, and even the role of orchestration between the network and the use cases could be allocating accordingly. So slice to me and to many others, including in GMN, I hope, is about network on demand. It's about allocating what somebody needs, and that thing, somebody in one of these recent conferences mentioned that giving their own EPC to a village of 10 people, I mean, that is the vision that you dynamically can allocate. So
that's the personal EPC that Wen just mentioned also.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I also want to add to the question which you may have asked that the analytics has such a wide range from direct monetization to an indirect efficiency and monitoring and operation. Just as I said, bottom up or top down, you can't do without knowing things you need to scale, you need to do, and so it's all the range. It's not just following the user habits and mindset. Like today, I go to a website, it tells me I may be interested in this or that. I mean, it's not just context awareness in the sense of sending coupons and so on, but much wider, and for certainty, it's also about operation. Thank you.
I just want to add to that, as Jeff and Javan were saying, network slicing, and of course, as you said, it is virtual capacity, right? Virtualized capacity. But the idea is really to provide flexibility, right? It's all about flexibility. You have different types of drivers coming in from the users. You'd have a lot of video traffic. You have a lot of M2M IoT traffic that will be, coming into 5G. And the nature of these streams of traffic are different from each other, right? High throughput to low throughput. High latency to low latency, low latency requirements to high latency. But the idea is that the network should be able to detect various streams of traffic and be able to flexibly respond to it. And for that, you need to do really good analytics, collect data, analyze it, and then take adaptive action.
And that's where I would imagine the SDN NFV comes into the picture, because you can of course use NFV kind of things to do the analytics, but you can also feed the analytics back into an NFV enabled environment, so that now you can chain different things together based on what you just analyzed.
Exactly. When you think about operations, right, and I think that's really key, and I keep stating that OpEx is going to be really important here. There's no number of manual touch that will be sufficient to be able to handle this traffic. You have to automate. There's no other choice. And so it's really NFV SDN with the implied automation that comes with it that is critical in the 5G space. And I guess in the 4G plus 5G space.
Wonderful. So we have a few more questions, so that's great.
So
please introduce yourself and then just ask the question.
So my name is Ajay, and I'm from a company called ContextStream. I'm hearing a couple of different things here. So I heard network slicing and I heard dynamic. So I'm just trying to figure out from the panel where you guys are on what exactly that means. I mean, is slicing something that happens? What's the time scale at which slicing happens? If it's a village of 10 people, is it like allocated for 5 minutes to a person, or is it something that happens for 5 hours, or a flow is detected for 15 seconds and something happens? What time scale are we talking about? And if that's, is it something that orchestration is going to deal with, which a VM takes a couple of minutes to boot up? So is it orchestration we're talking about, or is it SDN that we're talking about? So any light that you guys can share on this would be helpful.
So I think Javan made a good clarification. So with regards to network slicing, it will be variable time frame. Orchestration, in my mind, I'm going to sort of bounce around, but I'll start toward the end of your question. So orchestration, in the way we see it and the way we use it, is more to manage infrastructure. So it works on the timelines of minutes to seconds, and can flexibly move network functions around. But once it's moved a network function, turned up a VM, it has to boot an image, it has to provide configuration. So it works really in the timeline of minutes. But that's perfectly, today we work orchestration in timelines of months, not years. Okay, so to go to minutes is a great improvement. In terms of network slicing, if you want to view it from a dynamic perspective, it still has a cost if you control things virtually and dedicate things virtually. So, the view of how you can create profiles and policy to manage subscribers and then dynamically allocate could be in the timeline of hours if you wanted to download a feature-length film to your device or your capability, or it could be in the term of seconds. So if you wanted to handle instantaneous congestion within a particular base station or a particular group of base stations, you could allocate control and do lossless shaping of traffic, and that would be in the time frame of seconds, literally a few seconds, take down the spike of traffic and return conditions to normal. So, the dynamic network slicing really will be done with SDN, and that actually works a very, very short timeline. And there's already applications up and running around the world where we use application-aware networking to do that.
Yes, sir.
Just add a little bit technically speaking, when you have a network SDN controller to optimize the flow, let's say almost 500,000 of the flows. To do that, the computing time, that means how dynamic you have to do in terms of protocol, it has to be within 100 milliseconds in order to make a stable flow placement. So those are the limits. And then Jeff was saying that this on the service level, yes, seconds or minutes.
That's a good point, and I just wanted to add that at the service level, don't discount the possibility of using predictive analytics. So you may not be reacting all the time. You can actually do some trending analysis over time and be able to take action in time, for that capacity need.
One other thing is that, we've talked about virtual machines, but also containers are getting a lot of airplay now. And containers do give you the ability to move much quicker and much more flexibly in a service environment. Again, you have to think about it ahead of time before you deploy that environment, but containers can actually move much quicker.
So just one quick point of clarification. So is analytics, when you talk about analytics, is taking the planning part of the equation out, right? Is that
Automating that because this whole capacity planning paradigm that we've had is going to transform with NFV and SDN, as you can tell.
But the network still needs to react to changing conditions like an earthquake or something like that. Right?
That is true. So when you have events like that, the response to it, that's really what we're talking about here is you get a lot more flexibility with NFV and SDN than you ever had before, right?
Right, there was another question at the back.
I'm Narshima, I'm a consultant. With NFV inherent to 5G, moving the content to the edge, will it address some of the latency requirement? If not for the whole business case, at least for some of the M2M and IoT functionalities. That's my question one. And question two is not for this panel discussion, for the whole day's discussion. When we eventually deploy 5G, it's going to be a number of frequencies. So is SDR is going to be a solution for consistent experience across geographies? Software-defined radio.
Can you just do can you just do the first question again, please, because I'm not sure I got that. So what was the first question? If the panel got it, great, they can respond.
I can take the second question.
All right.
Easy one. Okay, so for 5G, you won't see frequency bands. I guess that radio will be band agnostic and likely, and probably very likely, it won't be license on license band also agnostic. So from that point of view, from network point of view, you don't see the bands.
And along those lines, I think policy, we didn't talk a lot about it, but it will work very closely with orchestration and control being realized through SDN, orchestration through orchestration, and policy as well. So, what access, Wi-Fi is not going away. I don't know if we could mention Wi-Fi in the 5G conference, but Wi-Fi is going to grow and have a robust ecosystem around it. And policy-based access control will be very important, because certain types of content may be much more appropriate for certain different access networks. So having that working in conjunction with SDN and NFV will be very, very powerful, I think. And again, there's work already going on. I think some of these core concepts will be realized before 5G, in total. I think 2017, 2018, we'll start to see the emergence of those.
Yes.
Is there still a first question?
I'm sorry?
Is there still a first question?
Okay. Can you just repeat the first question again, please?
If you still have it.
I think Jeff got it, but why don't you just do that?
Yeah, what I was trying to say is moving the content to the edge, will it address some of the latency requirements for 5G?
The answer is yes.
Yeah, moving the content to the edge.
Sure. All I say is, there are two layers. One is when we talk about a requirement for a user and so on, and then how we do that. In many ways, it's also observed and it's suggested that you have to deal with content at the edge, or you have to deal with how the cloud brings it closer, or especially with certain applications. So that is not excluded, but there's a variety of scenarios.
We've done a lot of studies around content delivery in wireless networks, and both in 3G and 4G, obviously. And the metro transport of the content is really not a big contributor to latency. There are really two big areas. One is the actual finding the content on the internet. Okay, DNS it's not working well, and with the advent of HTTP 2.0. And transport layer security being implemented, and Google doing what Google's doing, it's going to get worse. The DNS is going to get worse. You're going to have a lot more redirections around the internet looking for the content, even if you're in a CDN. So that's probably the biggest contributor to latency. The second biggest is actually scheduling across the RAN. So any packet loss in a TCP world is going to generate retransmissions.
Sure.
And that actually causes problems even under very moderate congestion conditions in networks. And if you think about 5G, and you've got multi-band, you've got carrier aggregation, you've got integrated backhaul and access, the odds of having some packet loss, I think, will increase, actually. So what we're going to need to do is determine ways to solve both of those problems. And I think 5G, a lot of the contributions from Ericsson, Cisco, I'm not sure if Huawei contributed, but in some of these papers, we've pushed information-centric networking. I think that really solves a lot of the first problem I referred to, which is find a way to reference content within the fabric of the internet. And then the other one, of course, is caching it locally and then scheduling the content and having error correction more robustly encoded with that. So I think caching dynamically near the edge will be very important. I also think that information-centric networking, some of these concepts that are coming forward, will also be very, very important.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the audience? There's a question at the back.
Thank you. I'm Femi from Fujitsu. I do understand network flexibility with SDN and NFV, efficiency, as well as optimization. But there's a question in under the panel that asks specifically, how will SDN and NFV create new ways for operators to monetize the network? I mean, all I heard is something about big data, but specifically, what are other ways by which operators can really monetize this new change? They're going to spend money. How will they recover that back? Efficiency, optimization, that's all great for the network, but how do they recover their investment in this new paradigm?
So are you talking about how can they deploy new services using SDN and NFV, or is it?
How will they how will the operators monetize the network in a better way?
Okay, great. So basically, how will the operators monetize the network better with SDN and NFV? Thoughts on that?
Well, I share a few words. First of all, I'm not sure that I can give you an answer. It's something that has different dimensions. For example, when we look at what to do next, and some of the operators are ahead in this game, there are the question of what makes you, adds to your revenue, not necessarily monetize as a particular scenario or service that does not exist otherwise. But there are cases where it reduces cost, and there are cases which may be more towards creating new markets. So one thing we have to look at here at the minimum is that when we talk about programmability and unleashing innovation and so on, by default we are moving towards the direction of monetization as well. I mean, it is a wide spectrum, but I hope you agree that at the minimum, not only in terms of providing cost efficiency and flexibility, but providing a much wider ecosystem and responding fast to changes in a programmable and innovative way can allow us with countless number of new possibilities unimagined today.
I just wanted to add to what Javan said is, you will see new types of applications coming up. And it's not just going to be unique to what 5G is going to bring about, but that as you go into LTE advanced and so on, you'll see more of these new types of applications coming forth. There are a bunch of examples out there in the white papers. But I think from an operator perspective, we talked about CapEx and OpEx as you confirmed, but the key aspect of it is time to market. Time to market is going to be much faster. In our experience, right, and you think about in the non-virtualized environment, to stand up a test environment to go test out equipment that we get, that's needed to launch a service, it takes several months, right, 8-9 months, just to go, through the testing process. By the time you have the service out there, you're talking 1.5 to 2 years before the service is out there with the customers. So the idea is that if you are running in a virtualized environment, you can get that capacity turned up, you can get your test environments turned up really quickly in the cloud. And so my thinking is that you'll be able to get services out there much faster in a virtualized environment, and therefore time to market, therefore monetization as well.
Sorry, can I add a line here, just inspired by what Pari said and what I said earlier? Think of reducing time to market as a direction towards more monetization, and reducing total cost of ownership as a direction towards cost efficiency.
And just if you were hearing, throughout the day there were several examples shared in multiple presentations about basically mission critical IoT or high bandwidth IoT, or which are applications where you can facilitate traffic steering and other things using SDN, for example. That's one thing that has been talked about today, the ability to steer traffic more efficiently. So that can probably be done with SDN a whole lot better, and therefore you can also monetize those kinds of applications. All right, so any more questions from the audience? We have a few more minutes left. It'll be great to get, if you have some last minute thoughts. Are we done? Okay, all right. That's it, that's the last question. That is our time for panelists. Thanks, man.